Ache Willow, Season 5, Chapter 12, Doggone. I have no fight left in me. From that, I draw both power and weakness. The weakness is obvious. The strength to raise arms and defend myself is missing. Physically, of course, but also mentally. I'm a gun without ammo, a chili without spices. I watch Francisco the Inquisitor as he stands behind a line of salt laid down to protect against demonic forces. His right hand cradles the left in front of him, and everything about his person is impeccable, even his smile. At his side, that terrible leather briefcase of his. There's something unholy about someone so well put together so early in the morning. But that's where I draw my power. I know from the smugness where this scene is heading, and with no desire to struggle against its outcome, I have all the necessary distance to guide its path. Lips tight and eyelids still sticky from my brief night of slumber, I look around the back of the Ache Willow. I see not what is before me this morning, but rather all the things I've witnessed and experienced before. In front of the dumpsters is where the dawn kept me from being mauled by the hunger demon. Yet only a few feet from there is where I lay after the same monster pierced my flesh with its claw. Atop the rusting metal boxes, I can see Agnes, all her demonic glory on display as she stood up for me. Last, but by no means least, I see where the body of Anais Duchesne was discovered. My first Ache Willow corpse, and my first indication that life in this town would be anything but simple and easy. Sure, I may have no fight left in me. The Inquisitor has me cornered in more ways than one. But I know his game plan before he even takes the first move, and this is my alley. I've bled and cried here. I own this asphalt in ways that Francisco cannot begin to imagine. "What a pleasant surprise," he says, motionless behind the salt. "I did not expect to find you here this early." There's no point in giving him a reply just yet. My leg is killing me, and I'm in no mood to stand on it while this conversation happens. With a sigh, I lower myself to sit on the steps behind the Ache Willow. The concrete isn't quite dry, but not exactly wet either. It's in that middle stage where spots of gray are darker than others, still saturated with water. Even through the denim of my pants, I can feel the chill of these steps, and I find it bracing. No, I'm in little hurry to listen to the Inquisitor's smooth words. Hell, I haven't even had my coffee yet. Only once comfortable do I grace Francisco with any sort of answer. "Muffins and croissants don't bake themselves," I say, looking over my shoulder as if I could see the kitchen through the wall. "A lot of people depend on me having coffee and breakfast ready for them." "Ah, we do have that in common, you and I. Duty, and a strong attachment to it." I chuckle. Maybe it's the exhaustion doing my thinking for me, but the mighty Inquisitor reminds me of a drama student. He's chewing up his dialogue as if fishing for an award. Unless the raccoons pop up out of their dumpsters to applaud, I'm afraid the Inquisitor will be disappointed. "Yeah, well, if I don't feed my clients, then I'm the one who starves. It's more of a business obligation than a virtue." He nods his understanding, hiding his teeth behind his lips, but never giving up on the smile. "I completely understand," he says, mock conviviality still in full effect. "I used to have a more traditional job myself. I sold insurance for a while to pay my way through university. Would you believe it?" I have absolutely no problem believing. He could have said used car salesman or lawyer, and I'd have been just as comfortable layering those stereotypes over my portrait of the man. My lack of reaction takes a moment to sink in, but it does nothing to shake Francisco's amused detachment. After a while, his eyes settle on the line of salt at his feet, and I know that he's finally done with the theatrics. But it's too early to reminisce about previous careers, isn't it? I am curious, however, about all this salt that seems to have been spilt behind your business, Miss Dufour. If my body begs for painkillers and a gallon of coffee, my mind has no time for games. If Francisco of the Inquisition wants to play coy, let him. But I'm flipping all my cards. Demon came lurking, I say, as matter of fact as the rising sun. Had to protect the raccoons. There it is. No fight, but still I wield power. I got the Inquisition to raise both eyebrows. I've wandered off script. Whatever dialogue he'd rehearsed, Francisco now has to improvise. Well, that's convenient. Maybe we'll be able to conclude business here in a timely manner after all. Tell me, Miss Dufour, where did the demon go? As he waits for me to give him directions, Francisco pulls at his pant leg and crouches to pick up his briefcase. I'm sure if I gave him precise coordinates, he'd be off to do whatever it is demon hunters do to hellhounds. But we'll be having none of that. Can't say. I wave my arm in the vague direction of the forest. Somewhere in the woods, but it was dark and I didn't exactly follow along. The eternal smile begins to falter. A little shaking of the bottom lip and some extra pulling at the edges. Whatever mask Inquisitor Francisco usually wears with ease is becoming a struggle to maintain. Could you tell me, then, what kind of infernal being we're dealing with? It feels like I'm stealing his face, putting on the smile he once wore along with the self-assurance that comes with it. Maybe I am still in the mood for games. Maybe I still have some cards to play. I'm afraid I wouldn't know. I'm not exactly an expert on demons. Maybe you can educate me. The act is over, the scene having played out in a way the actor didn't plan. Gone are the smile and niceties. Francisco pokes at the salt that separates us with the tip of his polished loafers, barely disturbing the line. Demons, he says, at last with newfound gravitas, are nothing to trifle with, Miss Dufour. Every minute they are allowed to walk free and unchallenged is a chance for them to kill and damn the living. I would not hesitate to lay the burden of blame at the feet of anyone who would knowingly allow such a thing to happen. I abandon my mask of amusement, dropping the smile off my face. I do not, however, replace it with fear or anger, but annoyance. Pushing myself to stand, I am suddenly filled with a powerful sense of purpose. Not to confront or defeat Francisco in conversation, but rather to put the man and his veiled threat behind me, the better to go get some baking done. You're the demon hunter, I explain with a generous helping of condescension. Go hunt a demon. I'm just a cook with some cooking to do. Spinning on my heels, I attempt to turn and leave these talks behind me. Already, I picture myself crushing some walnuts to add to maple tarts and chopping herbs to mix into an egg salad. But the Inquisition will not let things go. A witch, he states, loud in the morning silence. You're a witch, not a cook. A witch that has enjoyed far too generous reprieve for her sins. Looking over my shoulder, I can see that the buttery facade of unctuous charm is slipping. This Inquisitor is about to get mean. But he's not speaking with the customer service version of Miriam this fine morning. I have no desire to sell him cake or keep order in my dining room. This is the back alley of the Aquilo. It's where things get ugly. Forget not who it is you are dealing with, Miss Dufour, he warns, his words a sermon as well as a threat. I can make your life more difficult than you can possibly imagine. And like a cracker between teeth, I snap. Ignoring the pain in my shoulder and the numb ache in my leg, I step down from the porch and close the distance between us. Again, I can see that this is not the reaction Inquisitor Francisco was expecting. He doesn't exactly take a step back, but the heel of his right shoe does leave the ground. When I'm close enough that I could spit in his face, I break the serenity of my facial expression and let my disdain for this oily little man show. All my anger for the Inquisition is funneled onto him at that point. Everything I've never been able to forgive Orleans and Alessandria for, but have kept bottled up, is now bubbling to the surface. "Get in line," I growl. Eyes locked onto mine, as if he were expecting me to pull out my spoon and hex him, or turn him into a newt. Francisco kneels down to pick up his leather briefcase. Whether he intended to walk away or pull out a weapon and smite a witch, I'll never find out. Just as the tension between us is getting thick enough to almost wipe away the line of salt separating me from the Inquisitor, we're interrupted with a bark. Not the spine-melting voice of the hellhound either, thank the mother, but the excited yelp of a smaller specimen, one with skin, fur, and the boundless joy of a small dog in its heart. "My apologies," a shy, fragile voice echoes from around the corner. This is where I'm reminded of how delicate anger can be. Sometimes, even the most tense of confrontation, those that toe the line near explosive conflict, cannot survive the spotlight. A really good fury is such a fragile thing that, once in the presence of an audience, it withers away. "Mr. Mitchell?" I ask, surprised. "What are you doing here?" What a fun morning this has turned out to be. Not satisfied with having a third person threatening me, fate has concocted the most awkward situation on this tired spring morning. Horace Mitchell, the widower who never used to come down to Rue Principale, is once again wandering the area. Never mind what he could possibly be doing at this time of day, walking in the shadows of Aquilo's back alleys. He's interrupting a serious verbal altercation revolving around subjects that should be far outside his realm of knowledge. When he turns the corner, stepping into the open area behind the cafe, he does so surrounded by a veritable retinue. Half a dozen dogs on leashes swarm at his feet, representing a wide variety of sizes and breeds. An overexcited Chihuahua bounces in front, shockingly silent. Then there's a few others, including a black lab so dark he nearly vanishes in the morning shadows. Bringing up the rear is an adorable aging golden retriever. His fur is a pale blonde, and he limps a little with each step, though that doesn't stop him from wagging his tail in excitement. It's an odd time and an odd place to walk so many dogs, but Horace did say he tried to stay away from people. "I had no idea that I would run into anyone," he apologizes further. "I was just on my way back home, actually. Very sorry to have interrupted." The dogs, as if of one mind, all start sniffing at the line of salt on the ground. Two of the smaller ones take a lick that they immediately regret. The lab pulls at his leash, curious about the other person standing with us. Francisco, briefcase in hand, has regained his smooth disposition. In fact, the transformation from vicious predator into affable and charming man happened almost without my notice. As I was counting dogs, he smoothed his features and straightened his back, slapping that perfect smile onto his lips again, white teeth shining in the pre-dawn light. Now that I've seen Francisco's true colors, I'm surprised that the dogs aren't all growling at him, smelling the malice that I witnessed. Instead, the pack is split between those who want to investigate me and those who would rather play with the Inquisitor. "No worries at all, Mr. Francisco asks, polite as a politician. "Horace. Well, Horace, Miss Dufour and I had just concluded our talk, and I was about to be on my way. Perhaps she'll be so kind as to offer you some coffee once I'm gone." I step away from the Inquisitor and a little towards Mr. Mitchell. This puts me in range of the dogs, who all begin sniffing at my hands and legs. There's a talent to lying at the drop of a hat. I was a teenager until not so long ago, so lying isn't exactly outside of my repertoire. However, To pull out a completely new persona and weave an improvised tale without preparation or forethought is something I've never mastered. Of course, I say, teeth ground tight as I fail in my attempt at conviviality. I was just about to open. And I, Francisco says, offering a little wave that might be comical under different circumstances, have things to attend to. You will think about what I've said, Miss Dufour, won't you? I'm about to crack a molar holding this parody of a smile, but I do my best to preserve this act I've been forced into. Of course, but I think you already know my thoughts on the matter. Well, he says, turning to walk away, I will see you later then. Ciao. Is it too late to become a bad witch? I keep hearing rumors that Philomene, the Dufour woman that came before Doris, was a bit off. Maybe it's not too late to look into that branch of the Aquilo tree. Horace and I watch as Francisco, briefcase in hand, winds his way out of the alley. Then we wait some more, only the sound of a golden retriever licking at my fingers to break the silence. It's only when I'm sure that the Inquisitor is far outside of hearing range that Horace Mitchell leans towards me and whispers, I really don't like him. What a wonderful little man. Amen, I reply, stuffing my hands in my apron pocket. How about that coffee? Shockingly, the offer is declined. I would have sweetened it with promises of fresh-baked rolls and croissants, but I don't think I want 6 random dogs wandering around the dining room while I monitor an oven. I wasn't kidding, Miss Dufour, Horace says. I really do have to take these guys home. Breakfast is an important affair at my old place. I have no doubt, I laugh, rubbing the Labrador's head. And please, I think you can call me Miriam now. I'm rewarded with the most sincere old man smile. You know the kind I'm talking about. Usually they're followed by a piece of hard candy or some soft life advice. Horace has neither of those, but he does have dogs, and right now that's just as good. In fact, would you like a hand wrangling the squad back home? I'll be fine on my own, Horace says, handing me a fistful of leashes. But I also welcome the company. The cafe will open late. By the time I'm back, there will be a line of people waiting for coffee and one calm, white-clad cult leader expecting his daily box of croissants. Annabelle will probably also be there, demanding to be fed like a bear that's gotten used to stealing from a campsite. With the night and now morning that I've endured, I deserve to walk a half-dozen good boys back to their home while enjoying the sun rising over Aquilo. It's a luxury I too seldom afford myself, and while not very professional of me, it's one I need. These religious types, Horace starts a few moments into our stroll. They're certainly something, aren't they? Oh, don't get me wrong. Father Vincent is a darling of a man, and that tall blonde fellow with the cloud pamphlets is always very polite. But then you have the dangerous fanatics. Listening to Horace, I look up and see the twin steeples of the Aquilo Church. I've never set foot inside, and have never met Father Vincent. In fact, I was surprised to learn that the parish only had one priest. Somehow, I expected the spiritual leadership of Aquilo to be split, much like the political one. I'm guessing you don't care much for the other two who hang around town either? Horace gives a slight, uncertain tilt of his head, as if he could shake the answer from his skull. The tall girl, Alessandria, she's fine. A hard believer, but honest. She doesn't prevaricate around the bush, if you know what I mean. The small one, though, he's slick. I don't have much patience for slick people. I nod. Though I've come to appreciate Orléans despite his own eccentricities, I understand where Horace is coming from. His perspective of Alessandria, however, is something I hadn't considered before. If I have to be completely honest myself, he continues, I heard a decent share of your confrontation with that new one. What's his name? Francisco. Right. I don't like the way he was threatening you. Unkind and undeserved, if you ask me. I deal with cats and dogs and hamsters and snails, and you want to know what I've learned? I smile, comforted having someone share my dislike of Francisco. I learned that with a little kindness, you can get almost anyone to cooperate. I bet if he knew that too, he'd get a lot more done a lot easier. Since knowing Horace Mitchell, I'd only pictured him as a sad little man who'd lost the love of his life. In my defense, that was all the poor widower had to show me. The more I get to know him, the more I'm learning to appreciate his point of view, perhaps even seeing some commonalities between us. So, how much did you hear, anyway? Do you mean if I heard you two discussing demons? I stop. The 3 leashes I hold go taut as the dogs I'm guiding home pull, not realizing my sudden paralysis. Petrified and looking for what to say next, I almost let slip the animals, but they fortunately all sit when they finally notice how I've frozen in place. Horace laughs. Oh, I knew something was afoot when you asked me about keeping my lovelies safe. I'm sorry, I managed to mutter after a second to gather my wits. I'm just always a little surprised when someone just knows, you know? He nods and we start walking again. The old man is nice enough to leave some time, allowing me to order my thoughts again before speaking up. I saw it, he says. The demon. The night before Meredith's funeral. Saw it while walking the dogs I did. Melchior and Breadbox were there too. He points at the black lab and the small schnauzer mix, identifying his companions that night. Must have been terrifying. Actually, he says, shaking his head, it really wasn't. The dogs certainly did not like it one bit, but did you know that demon is wounded? I wouldn't call it harmless. Them's some sharp teeth. But I tell you, if an old man can outrun it, that thing can't be much of a threat. Almost makes you feel sorry for the damn thing. He knows. He's seen the wound and he gets it. Yes, I say, excited at the prospect of an understanding ear. Its hind leg is a complete mess. It's a struggle to keep the volume of my voice on as tight a leash as I do the dogs, but with more people dripping into the streets of Aquilo, I make an effort. You know, I venture, my great-grandaunt used to feed another demon, kept it docile for weeks, maybe even months. I watch Horace, gauging his reaction at my words. Seeing that he's more curious than shocked, I continue. Makes you wonder if maybe I can do something like that for this demon. I expect some surprise, maybe even a bit of outrage. After all, what I'm suggesting is bonkers if you don't believe in such things as demons. Borderline suicidal if you do. Horace doesn't seem bothered by it. Au contraire, he's completely serene, with perhaps a touch of gladness. He nods a little, listening attentively for more details. What do you have in mind? He asks, genuine curiosity in his voice. Lavender shortbread, I say, the thought materializing as I speak it. I'll have to think of exactly how to flavor it, maybe with mint or something similar. If I can somehow reach in and pluck out the wrath, I think it'll work. This is my element. Something inside tells me that I'm on the right track and that this is going to work. You're the expert, Horace says, but I can see some of his enthusiasm has gone. All I know is, when a dog's got pent-up energy, you can't just feed him till he calms down. You gotta tucker him out. Not sure if that applies to demon dogs, but it's how I handle mine. Make a model, Eric says, like it's the most obvious thing in the world. Turns out, walking dogs across town with Horace Mitchell on a wounded leg was not the genius idea I thought it would be. By the time I was halfway back to the Aquilo Cafe, my calf was killing me. It hurt so bad I had to stop by the side of the road and have a look at the damage. Let me tell you, it was gross. The wound, or rather wounds, plural, one for each tooth that punctured the skin, were definitely infected. The blood and pus had dried and coagulated into the fibers of my sock. All of that walking around tore at the scabs and pulled at the damage, making everything so much worse. I made it home, but every step along the way was torture. On the flip side, Eric did something good. Great, even. When he came down and saw the line in front of the cafe, he opened the Aquilo without me. Now, Eric can't make toast without a set of instructions and a safety net, but he can serve coffee and rummage through the refrigerator well enough. The real genius, though, was giving Stefan a call. Cooking aside, there's nothing Stefan can't do at the cafe. Of course, that means I had to take the afternoon shift, but it gave me enough time to take a shower, clean out those wounds, and most importantly, finish figuring out my recipe. Blood flowing with ibuprofen, I'm back to slinging drinks and fulfilling orders, all while preparing some lavender shortbread when I get a minute. "This isn't some architecture homework," I reply, measuring out some sugar. "I can't just scale it down, glue on some plastic people, and call it done." "Now you're being too literal," Eric answers. He's working the coffee machine for the last 2 customers loitering about. It's late, and I have perhaps another half hour before I can close. I'm a little worried that I haven't seen Annabelle all day. My supply of sandwiches was as low today as it was overflowing yesterday, so perhaps it's for the best. But with everything going on, I expected her to drop by to at least see if she could steal a snack. Not to mention, I could have used her help tonight. "What I'm saying is," Eric continues, "try a proof of concept. Use that salt trick to trap the thing, then feed it your magic cookies and see if it works. If not, no harm, no foul. Come home and try again. Like a client presentation, but less mean." How many client presentations have you done? I know the answer, but what kind of sister would I be if I didn't tease a little? "Soon, Mim, soon. I'm just taking this year off." I want to say it's stupid, but he's got a good point. No sense going out there and betting the farm on one batch of shortbread. There's no denying that I have a knack for this, but unlike some other witches, I don't have much formal training, or an apprenticeship, or anything apart from raw instincts and a very messy recipe book with confusing notes. Speaking of which, the ancient tome is there, open on my kitchen counter. The page displayed has a lavender shortbread recipe. It's where I took my inspiration for those trottoirs I make. This, however, is a slightly more aggressive version. The yellowed page was held with a bookmark stained by pressed flowers. I think this is one of Elaine's. There's a note at the bottom of the ingredient list, written in flowery letters. The words almost look fun in their whimsy. "Clear the tavern with these," the note says. I've been meaning to ask Helen if the Aquilo was at some point not a coffee shop, but perhaps something else. Wouldn't that be something? Lacking a town historian, my friend the notary public would know. That's a worry for another day. Right now, I'm making magic shortbread. It feels great. "What's this?" Eric asks, pointing at a drawing taking up a good 1/5 of the page. He's been fascinated with the book since I pulled it out. I can't blame him. This is a family artifact, a genuine antiquity, and yet one more connection to this magical heritage neither of us knew we had. Well, knew I have. "A stamp," I explain. "In fact, why don't you go upstairs and get it? 3rd drawer left of the stove. Don't rummage around too much. I have knives in there. Sharp knives." "Why do you keep knives in the same drawer as a stamp?" I shrug. "It was like that when I got here. I'm not going to mess around with how Doris kept her kitchen. I'm a pro. I can adapt. Now go." My sibling damn near skips out of the cafe. Maybe it's because I finally gave him permission to walk into the upstairs kitchen. Maybe he's just growing bored watching me cook. Doesn't matter. Aside from the occasional side-eye to the dining room, I can fully commit to this spell. It should be an easy one. I've practiced with the trottoir. I've done something very similar with honey cakes. So why am I so nervous about it? Horace is the answer to that one, and the reason why Eric suggests a trial run. It all does look awfully dainty and quaint, doesn't it? Sugar and flour and butter and honest-to-God flower essence. This is what I'm bringing to my showdown with a demon? I'm seconds from giving up when I hear the chimes of the Aquilo's front door. A quick look confirms my 2 remaining customers are still loitering behind their laptops and smartphones, so Eric must be back.
That was quick.
I stop short. The shadow in the kitchen door is wrong. It's both bulkier and shorter than Eric, and it's definitely not here to bring me my stamp.
She kicked me out.
Annabelle, sporting a camping bag at least half her size, is standing there, wearing an expression I can't quite puzzle out. She sounds a little angry, but her face is all confusion. Then there's her body language that's more relaxed than I've seen in weeks.
Veronique? Yep. I don't know what you told her, but Mom said I was your problem now.
Oh. Damn. What do I even say to that? We all break things, right? Most times they're irrelevant, but we all have those instances where we broke an important item. Take Eric, for instance, who, when I was 6, accidentally ripped the leg off Fiona, my absolute favorite stuffed cat. I damn near gave the whole family tinnitus with how long and loud I cried. My own list of irreplaceable and expensive items damaged or destroyed is longer than most. I've gone through almost every utensil and countertop appliance my mother owned. The most traumatic was at Grandma's place, where I broke a cake dish that she got from one of her distant relatives. Mammy was devastated. I could see it, despite her many reassurances that it was fine. "It's just a dish," she would say. But anyone could see that it wasn't like any other dish. This was an heirloom, and every attempt to make me feel better just dug that hole deeper in my soul. This is how I feel now. Annabelle doesn't seem upset or angry. She seems almost amused and perhaps relieved. That doesn't remove from the fact that I broke that. Because I felt the need to stand up to Mayor Veronique Lagacé. Her daughter is now essentially homeless. I hesitate to confess.
She told me to mind my own business. She said she'd handle whatever's going on between you two. And I said no. Oh, Mother, Annabelle, I am so sorry.
She doesn't hesitate. Whether because she needs it or I do, or both, she crashes into me, holding me tight in her arms.
Was she pissed?
Annabelle asks.
Oh, yeah,
I answer, a little relieved that she's not mad at me.
Livid. Good,
Annabelle says, pulling away and setting her bag down in a corner of the kitchen. I can see her moist eyes and the wet thickness in her mascara. The best I can do is stand there, like an idiot in the middle of my kitchen, wondering what the next best step is supposed to be.
So,
she goes on.
What's cooking? Shortbread,
I reply, still gathering my emotions from the floor. Something's not right. Is Annabelle too at peace with this situation? Or is it sinking in that I've really pissed off an actual demon slayer and alpha politician, Mayor Veronique Lagacé? Aquilo is written by J.F. Dubois and narrated and produced by me, Amy Frost. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast platform. Want to support the show? Buy us a coffee. Go to ko-fi.com/Aquilo to donate. Aquilo has a Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Aquilo for details. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under the username Aquilo.